Okay, good morning. We have a quorum, so I would like to start the debate. Please get seated so that we can start. I'll give you half a minute and then I will start. Okay, first I will give the floor to the Secretariat for some housekeeping announcements. So Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, delegates. There's a couple of announcements from the side of the Secretariat today. First off, in terms of room management for the plenary, we kindly remind you not to sit in other delegation seats without asking them whether you can occupy those seats. We've had some difficulties with some delegations having overspill. So please kindly check with your neighbors whether it is okay to sit in their seats. Also, remember to insert your cards properly in the microphones to ensure that you will be able to vote if a vote is called for on any of the agenda items today. In terms of interpretation, kindly note that there is interpretation in Russian, and this is available on channel 4. Also regarding translation, kindly be reminded to speak at a good distance from the microphone. If you're either too close or too far from it, there will be difficulties in dealing with the translation for our interpreters. In terms of groups, kindly note that the working group on Pau Brasilia Echinata is scheduled to take place from 12:15 to 1:45 p.m. in the Black Stork room today. And kindly also note that there will be a bureau meeting at 5 p.m. in the Lone Orchid room, the same room as yesterday. Finally, we have received complaints from several parties relating to media. We would kindly remind all colleagues from media outlets that media is allowed to film and move around for the first 10 minutes of each meeting. After these first 10 minutes, they must return to the media section, which is at the back of the room after the rows of the observer delegations. Photographing or recording of any kind is not allowed after the first 10 minutes of each session. The only exception is the Earth Negotiation Bulletin photographer who's been hired by the host country and who has been allowed to take photographs throughout the session. This colleague is wearing a badge clearly indicating ENB. However, individuals can, of course, refuse to be photographed, and in this case, you should kindly ask or inform the photographer from ENB that you do not want to be photographed. All other media after the first 10 minutes of each session have to be in the media section and cannot record or photograph the rest of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Secretariat. So now we move on to some more species proposals. Yesterday we have dealt with proposal 40, and please be reminded that the proposals 44 and 50 that have been submitted by South Africa will be treated at the beginning of next week. They have been postponed at the request of South Africa. Okay, so with this, we move now to CoP20 Proposal 41 on Jubea chilensis, the Chilean palm, and it is a proposal to include the species into Appendix 1. I give the floor to Chile to introduce that document. Chile, you have the floor.
Gracias, presidente. Señor presidente y distinguidos delegados, la palma chilena, Jubea chilensis, es una especie endémica monotípica de la zona central de Chile que se distribuye desde el nivel del mar hasta los 2.000 metros de altitud, siendo el único género de palmeras endémico de la costa pacífica de América del Sur y la palma más austral del mundo. En la actualidad, su distribución geográfica es muy restringida y se ha evidenciado una progresiva disminución de su población original, transformándola en bosquetes residuales que se desarrollan en algunas quebradas, valles y lomajes suaves, su mayoría en áreas protegidas del Estado. Esto se ha explicado por la alteración de su hábitat provocado por una combinación de factores antrópicos y naturales, entre ellos su explotación para la producción de miel, la extracción y venta de su semilla, tanto en mercado nacional como internacional, la ocurrencia de incendios forestales, la deforestación, los cambios de uso de suelo, principalmente para urbanización y uso agrícola, la herbivoría de sus semillas y plántulas por parte de fauna exótica y efectos del cambio climático, entre otras amenazas. Destacar que el documento Propuesta de Enmienda número 41 de la COP20 contiene, a modo de resumen, mayores antecedentes en relación a aspectos biológicos de la especie, su ecología, estado de conservación, fragmentación de su hábitat y reducción de su distribución, donde también se resalta que el tiempo requerido por la especie para comenzar la producción de semillas, que varía entre los 30 y 60 años, es una condición que la expone a amenazas por un largo periodo de tiempo que afecta las fases de reclutamiento en sus poblaciones y que se verifica con la escasa presencia de regeneración natural. A su vez, la extracción de semillas para comercio nacional e internacional de plantas, semillas y frutos se vuelve un factor crítico de amenaza para la supervivencia de la especie y fue uno de los factores considerados para que fuese catalogada en el año 2020 en la categoría en peligro durante el proceso nacional de clasificación de especies. Ya en la reunión número 27 del Comité de Flora, Chile presentó la propuesta que figura en el documento número 34 para la inclusión de esta especie en el apéndice 1 de la Convención, considerando para ello los requisitos establecidos en el artículo 2, numeral 1 del texto de la Convención y criterios que figuran en el anexo 1 de la Resolución 24 de la COP9 y revisada en la COP16 en cuanto a la clasificación oficial de amenaza de la especie y la existencia de comercio internacional como un factor principal de amenaza para su supervivencia. Señalar además que la Secretaría en el documento de trabajo COP20 DOC 114.1 sobre evaluación de las propuestas de enmienda a los apéndices 1 y 2 ha recomendado a las partes adoptar la propuesta respecto a incorporar la palma chilena al apéndice 1 de la Convención. Por lo anterior, nuestra delegación invita a las partes a estudiar con atención los antecedentes indicados respecto a endemismo, distribución, biología, ecología, amenazas, estado de conservación y comercio internacional de esta especie endémica y los insta a votar favorablemente a esta propuesta, lo que permitirá regular el comercio internacional de sus especímenes, partes y derivados, extendiendo así a nivel global la protección legal existente en Chile a través de normas de protección como las regulaciones establecidas en el Decreto Ley 701, la Ley 19.561 de Fomento Forestal, la Ley 20.283 de Bosque Nativo y Fomento Forestal y la representación en el Sistema Nacional de Áreas Silvestres Protegidas del Estado. Estimados delegados y delegadas asistentes a esta 20ª Conferencia de las Partes de CITES, estamos conscientes que su apoyo a la propuesta será coherente con el objetivo rector de la Convención, cual es regular el comercio internacional de especies amenazadas de fauna y flora silvestres a fin de velar por la supervivencia de dichas especies a través de un comercio sostenible, además de promover y articular con objetivos de biodiversidad asociados a otras convenciones. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Chile, for this introduction. I now open the floor to parties. Just to remind you that we are quite short on time, so please make your interventions short, crisp, and clear so that we can move on quite timely. So I open the floor to Argentina. Argentina, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. La región de América Central, del Sur y el Caribe aquí presente expresa su apoyo a la propuesta de inclusión de Juvea chilensis en el apéndice 1 de la Convención CITES. Consideramos que la información presentada demuestra de manera clara el elevado nivel de amenaza que enfrenta esta especie endémica de Chile, única en su género y cuya distribución natural se ha visto severamente reducida y fragmentada. La evidencia científica indica que Juvea chilensis ha experimentado un deterioro significativo de sus poblaciones debido a varios impactos, entre ellos la extinción la extracción local de frutos, incluido su creciente comercio internacional. Estos factores han dañado sus posibilidades de regeneración, lo que agrava su situación de peligro. Esta especie está categorizada como en peligro a nivel nacional en Chile y las amenazas persisten y se requiere una mayor respuesta a nivel internacional. En virtud de la elevada evidencia presentada y del principio precautorio, consideramos que la inclusión de Juvea chilensis en el apéndice 1 constituye una medida necesaria para reforzar su conservación, evitar presiones adicionales derivadas del comercio internacional y contribuir a la recuperación de esta emblemática especie endémica en Chile. Gracias, señor presidente.
Toda la región. Lo dijiste.
Thank you, Argentina. And now we have India. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. India supports the proposal number 41. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, India. That was short, crisp, and clear. Thank you very much. Republic of Korea, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The Republic of Korea appreciates Chile's efforts to conserve Juvea chilensis, and in principle supports the proposal to include the species in Appendix 1. However, during our technical review, we identified one issue related to the management of artificially propagated hybrids. This species is widely cultivated in many countries, including Korea, as boutique cultivars and intergeneric hybrids. And we believe this raises practical questions for implementation after listing. Interpretation paragraph 5 of the appendix states that artificially propagated living plant hybrids of Appendix 1 flora may be traded with a certificate of artificial propagation. However, resolution COP 11.11 Lab CoP18 paragraph 6 sub-paragraph B little III states that artificially propagated hybrids derived from unannotated Appendix 1 plant species shall be regarded as Appendix 2 and therefore treated under the exemption that apply to Appendix 2 artificially propagated specimens. These two texts use different approaches, and in practice, this may create confusion for authorities, customs, and traders, especially because a certificate of artificial propagation can be more broadly used than CITES permits. Korea fully supports Chile's proposal, and we simply hope that this technical point on hybrid can be reflected in future discussions, including any work related to clarifying interpretation or annotations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Korea. I think this is an important observation, and I'm sure this will be discussed further when necessary. I now have the European Union. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states. We support this proposal as the species qualifies for inclusion under CITES Appendix 1, fulfilling criterion A in Annex 1 of Resolution COP 9.24, as stated in the proposal, but also criteria B and C. This is an endemic species of Chile, currently restricted to highly fragmented and isolated populations with very small population sizes. The risk of extinction from synergistic threats, which include exploitation for sap and seeds, forest fires, land use change, and herbivory on seedlings and seeds, appears to be real, and the collapse of recruitment and regeneration is at least significantly facilitated by the seed harvest. International trade in seeds is evident and lacks control to prevent unsustainable trade in the seeds. Last but not least, this proposal was unanimously approved by Chile's Forestry Policy Council, composed by representatives of Chile's scientific and management authorities, the academic community, and related trade organizations, Also, the non-governmental organizations, the producers, and the owners of Chilean palm plantations were also consulted. Para terminar, queremos solamente agradecer a Chile haber presentado esta propuesta de inclusión de la palma chilena en el apéndice 1 de la Convención. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, European Union. I now see Canada. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Mexico.
Gracias, señor presidente. México también apoya la propuesta de Chile.
Thank you very much. Sudan.
Thank you, Chair. We support this proposal because uplisting of this species is stronger global protection for a highly threatened show-growing palm species and elimination of international commercial trade that could negatively affect wild population. Also, it enhances support for national recovery of these species. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudan. I have Dominican Republic. You have the floor.
Sí, muchas gracias, Chair. Disculpe, se apagó el micrófono. Gracias, Chair. Nosotros también apoyamos la propuesta. Entendemos que cuando se trata de especies endémicas, los países tienen, digamos, el derecho de imponer las medidas y salvaguardas que entiendan necesarias para la protección y conservación de sus recursos naturales. Muchas gracias, Chair.
Thank you. I think we have quite broad agreement. I now have only 2 more parties, and I think I will stay with these 2 last parties, and then I will go to IGOs and NGOs, so they do not need to press now. I have Senegal.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal soutient cette proposition.
And Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. And Pakistan supports this proposal for inclusion of the species in Appendix 1 as proposed by Chile. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I open the floor for comments from IGOs, NGOs. I see SSN. SSN, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Queremos felicitar a Chile por presentar esta propuesta. Un nuevo caso también de una especie endémica que se encuentra amenazada por el comercio internacional, en este caso de semillas y frutos. Esto ha impedido y ha desbalanceado la dinámica poblacional de esta especie. Cada vez quedan exclusivamente árboles adultos que cuando mueran no van a poder ser sustituidos por plántulas y juveniles. Agradecemos esta propuesta e invitamos a todas las partes a que aprueben la protección y la inclusión en apéndice 1 de esta especie endémica. Gracias.
Thank you, SSN. So having listened to the interventions, the conclusion is that proposal CoP20 Prop 41 on Jubea chilensis to include this species in Appendix 1 was accepted by consensus. So now we move to the next proposal, which is CoP20 Proposal 42 on Boccanera glaciana and Boccanera hookeri ponytail palms. The proposal wants to include into Appendix 2 as part of the listing of the genus Boccanera species. It has been proposed by Mexico and Switzerland as the depository government, and I would like to invite Mexico to introduce that proposal. Mexico, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Buenos días. La COP17 adoptó la propuesta de México para la inclusión de Boccanera recurvata en el apéndice 2, en congruencia con el artículo 2, párrafo 2A del texto de la Convención y el criterio B del anexo 2A de la resolución 924 así como también la inclusión de todo el género Bucarnea por similitud. El Comité de Flora 27 acordó integrar a Bucarnea hookeri y Bucarnea glaciana en una referencia de nomenclatura normalizada para el género, debido a que estas especies no formaban parte del género Bucarnea al momento de su inclusión en el apéndice 2. Por ello, su comercio internacional no se encuentra regulado por la Convención y, por tanto, el cambio de nomenclatura implica una enmienda sustantiva para el actual listado del género. Por ello, el PC27 invitó al gobierno depositario, en consulta con México, a evaluar ambas especies y a presentar propuestas de inclusión en el apéndice 2 en esta reunión, de conformidad con el párrafo 2F de la resolución CONF 12.11 Rep COP19 sobre nomenclatura normalizada. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mexico. With this, I open the floor to comments from parties. I see Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support this proposal.
Thank you. India.
Thank you, Chair. India support the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. United States.
Thank you, Chair. The United States supports the proposal, both because we do believe that two species would have lookalike concerns with the existing species, so of course under that, but we also believe that Bocarnia hookeri is targeted for international trade and is threatened under Mexican law, and so therefore meets the criteria for Appendix 2. Thank you.
Thank you, United States. Pakistan.
Thank you, Chair. Pakistan supports the inclusion of both the species in Appendix 2, as proposed by Mexico. Thank you.
Thank you. Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair. Zimbabwe, and on behalf of Africa, 50 countries, are in support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have now Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. Argentina apoya esta propuesta.
Thank you. Sudan.
Thank you, Chair. Sudan supports the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Chile.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Chile apoya la propuesta hecha por México. Muchas gracias.
Okay, I have 4 more parties, then I will close the list unless there is a party who is in opposition. So I give now the floor to Dominican Republic.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. República Dominicana apoya la propuesta.
Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nigeria supports the proposal. Thank you.
I have Colombia.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia apoya la propuesta presentada por México.
And finally, Honduras.
Honduras quiere manifestar que apoyamos también esta propuesta. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I think we have agreement. So the conclusion is that Committee 1 accepts proposal COP20 Prop 42 to include Bocarnea glaciana and Bocarnea hookeri in Appendix 2 by consensus. Thank you very much. So the next proposal is COP20 Proposal 48 on Aloe bergeriana, Aloe cepae, Aloe subspicata, and Aloe welwitschia. The proposal is to amend the listing of Aloe species in Appendix 2 to also include the 4 species previously treated in the non-listed genus Cortolerion, but now included in Aloe section Cortolerion, namely Aloe bergenia, the species I mentioned before. The proposal is submitted by South Africa and Switzerland and Zimbabwe, and I think it is Switzerland that is gonna introduce this proposal. So Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal was submitted after consideration by the Plants Committee on its 27th meeting, following the guidance of Resolution Conf 12.11 Ref CoP19 on standard nomenclature. Due to nomenclature change, 4 species from the genus Cortolerion are now in the genus Aloe and should therefore be listed in Annex 2 because of look-alike reasons. Therefore, we propose to amend the listing of the genus Aloe SPP in Appendix 2 to include the 4 species previously treated in the non-listed genus Cortolerion, and this would be namely Aloe bergeriana, Aloe cepea, Aloe subspicata, and Aloe welwitschia. As these species are indistinguishable from other Aloe species in trade, criterion A in Annex 2B of Resolution Conf 9.24 Ref CoP17 is satisfied for their inclusion in Appendix 2 in accordance with Article 2, Paragraph 2B of the Convention. Adding these species under the genus listing of Aloe may be a more pragmatic solution than adding an annotation to clarify that they are excluded from the appendices. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Switzerland, for the introduction. I now open the floor for comments from parties. I see Malawi.
Thank you, Chair. Malawi is in favor of the proposal.
I see now Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Le Sénégal aussi soutient cette proposition présentée par la Suisse, l'Afrique du Sud et le Zimbabwe. Merci.
Thank you. I see Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports the proposal.
Thank you. Republic of Korea.
Korea supports this proposal.
Thank you. Sudan.
Thank you, Chair. Sudan supports proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. Zambia supports the proposal.
Malaysia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Malaysia would like to support the proposal due to updated nomenclature. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Malaysia. Tanzania.
Thank you, Chair. The United Republic of Tanzania would also like to support the proposal.
Thank you. Benin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Puisque c'est la première fois que le Bénin prend la parole, je voudrais remercier le gouvernement de l'Ouzbékistan pour son hospitalité, le secrétariat pour la bonne organisation de cette COP et également vous, Président, vous féliciter pour votre nomination. Le Bénin soutient cette proposition et comme vous le voyez, elle reflète l'ensemble de la position de la région Afrique. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I see large support, so I will now close the list. I have 4 more parties. So Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya supports the proposal.
Thank you. Niger.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Donc, le Niger soutient cette proposition.
I now have the Philippines.
Thank you, Chair. The Philippines support the proposal.
Thank you. And Botswana.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana supports the proposal.
Thank you very much. So the conclusion is that the Committee 1 accepts proposal CoP20 Prop 48 on Aloe bergeriana, Aloe cepa, Aloe subspicata, and Aloe welwitschia to amend the listing of Aloe species in Appendix 2 to also include these 4 species by consensus. So with this, we can move on to the next proposal, which is CoP20 Proposal 51 on Aloe ferox, Cap aloe, and Euphorbia antisyphilitica candelilla to amend annotation number 4 as follows. Finished products packaged and ready for retail trade for Aloe ferox and Euphorbia antisyphilitica. And so the term packaged and ready for retail trade has been moved from the end of the line to before the 2 species. This document has been proposed by the UK as chair of the Standing Committee Working Group on Annotations, and I would like to invite the UK to introduce that document.
Thank you, Chair. As chair of the Standing Committee Working Group on Annotations, the United Kingdom proposes this listing proposal. In accordance with the Resolution Conf 11.21 on use of annotations in Appendices 1 and 2, any changes to annotations need to be proposed by a CITES party. The Annotations Working Group proposed a minor amendment to Annotation 4, Part F, to clarify and align the text with Annotation 4, Part G. The Working Group proposed amending Annotation Part F to the new wording of finished products packaged and ready for retail trade of Aloe ferox and Euphorbia antisyphilitica, instead of the current wording of finished products of Aloe ferox and Euphorbia antisyphilitica packaged and ready for retail trade. This minor amendment was supported by parties at the 78th Standing Committee meeting in the Annotations Working Group report. This amendment does not make any substantive change to either of the species listings or affect their conservation or trade. We would welcome any comments. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. I open the floor for comments from parties. I don't see anybody asking for the floor, so I take it that we agree that the committee accepts the proposal to amend the annotation number 4 on Aloe ferox and Euphorbia antisyphilitica to change the wording as to say F finished products packaged and ready for retail trade of Aloe ferox and Euphorbia antisyphilitica by consensus. So, thank you very much. Now we move on to working documents, and we have in front of us CoP20 Doc 59 on non-detriment findings for specimens of Appendix 2 species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction. So there is a recommendation in the committee is asked to agree on a recommendation in paragraph 10K in document, no. I have to mention that the recommendation in paragraph 10K in document CoP20 Doc 51 has been implemented by the Secretariat. The recommendations of the workshop have been appended to Module 5 of the CITES NDF guidance. So now the committee is asked to consider the draft decision in document CoP20 Doc 52 in introduction from the sea to address the relevant recommendations and implementation matters raised at the technical workshop. So now you have, I would open the floor for comments from parties, so you have the floor. I see Japan. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to express its appreciation for the efforts made by all participants in the technical workshop held in Geneva in 2024. We believe that the workshop provided a very practical and constructive discussion on NDF for specimens of CITES Appendix 2 species taken from areas beyond national jurisdiction. Japan supports all the recommendations contained in this document, as well as the amendment proposed by the Secretariat, as described in the document 52. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK agrees that decisions 19.135 through to 19.139 have been implemented and can be deleted. We would echo Japan in congratulating the Secretariat on organising a well-structured and collaborative workshop, and we thank parties for their constructive input. We do, however, acknowledge that there's more work to do to achieve robust NDFs and effective implementation of introduction from the sea. This urgency is underscored by sharks now being subject to RST and proposals presented to CoP20, for example, to list gulper sharks in Appendix 2. With that in mind, we believe the recommendations and implementation matters raised in paragraphs 10 and paragraphs 11, subparagraphs A to I, will be of significant value to parties. We note that we will consider their inclusion in the decisions of Document 52, Introduction from the Sea, later in our agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. I now see New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo the comments we've heard so far from Japan and the United Kingdom, but also thank the European Union and the United Kingdom for funding that very productive workshop that was organised in that key high seas fishing port of Geneva.
Okay. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. India wishes to thank the Standing Committee for the document COP Doc 51 and 52. While India supports adoption of the draft decisions contained in the document, we would like to highlight here the practical challenges for CITES authorities in effectively implementing the trade regulations for specimens of CITES listed species taken from beyond natural jurisdiction. We are of the view that this matter would require more detailed deliberations to assist the parties in managing such trade situations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. European Union.
Gracias, señor presidente. Hablo en nombre de la Unión Europea y sus Estados miembros que acogen con satisfacción los avances realizados para mejorar la aplicación del mecanismo de introducción procedente del mar en el taller celebrado en Ginebra en 2024, así como a través de las discusiones y decisiones de la reunión 78 del Comité Permanente. En este punto, creemos que la Res Conf 14.6 Ref COP16 es efectiva tal y como está y que las clarificaciones y otros detalles sobre la aplicación de la introducción desde el mar deben incluirse en las directrices sobre introducción procedente del mar y en el documento sobre las preguntas más frecuentes sobre introducción procedente del mar. No consideramos necesario, por tanto, revisar la resolución en sí y no apoyamos la decisión 20.bb. Gracias.
Thank you. This will be dealt with in whenever document 52 will be discussed. Then we will look at the decisions and we will see which ones are adopted and which ones, and this will be happening in committee 2, not in this committee. So for now, it's only about agreed to consider the relevant recommendations and the implementation matters. Agree that this is being done with document 52 in committee 2, and to agree to the deletions of the decisions 19.135 to 19.139. So the decisions will be dealt with, but in committee 2 under agenda item 52. I now see Tanzania.
Thank you, Chair. Tanzania supports the stock level approach to NDFs, ensuring consistency with the biological realities of shared marine resources. Tanzania urges clear rules for flag state responsibility and traceability for vessels operating across EEZ and ABNJ, and stresses the need for strong coordination between CITES and regional fisheries RFMOs to ensure harmonized implementation. Tanzania supports the adoption of draft decisions and deletion of decisions 19.135 to 19.139. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tanzania. Last speaker is Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports the deletion of decisions 19.135 to 139. We also support considering the draft decisions contained in document CoP20, Doc 52 on introduction from the sea, which addresses the relevant recommendations and implementation matters raised at the technical workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I will open the floor for HOs and NGOs. I see WCS, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. WCS appreciates the attention of parties to the implementation of their scientific obligations relevant to specimens taken in areas beyond national jurisdiction, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate to help ensure effective implementation of CITES for these specimens. We support the intervention from the United Kingdom that the excellent recommendations in paragraphs 10 and 11 of the document could be lost with the decisions as proposed, and we recommend that parties ask that these elements be included in these excellent elements be included in the NDF guidance that is published on the CITES website and the introduction from the sea page of the CITES website, because those are excellent recommendations that parties will want to refer to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, WCS. Just for information, these recommendations, they are already included in Module 5 by the Secretariat, so that has already happened. Okay, so with this, I conclude that the committee agrees to consider the relevant recommendations and implementation matters on the draft decision on introduction from the sea in document CoP20 Doc 52 to be dealt with later in Committee 2. And also agrees to the deletion of decisions 19135 to 19139. So with this, we now come to two document CoP20 Doc 66.1 and a related one that we will look at also in conjunction with document Doc 66.1, which is document 66.2. It's on trade in stony corals. The first document, the parties are asked to adopt revised decisions 19177 and 19178 and new draft decisions 20AA and 20BB on trade in stony corals contained in Annex 1, and also adopt the amendments to Resolution Conf 11.10 Ref COP 15 on trade in stony corals and the consequential amendments to Resolution Conf 9.6 Ref COP 19 on trade in readily recognizable parts and derivatives in Annexes 2 and 3 respectively. So I will now open the floor for comments from parties on these proposed changes to decisions, new decisions, and changes to the resolutions. I don't see any. Ah, now, okay. It's taken a while. I have counted to 10 and it was just almost finished when Australia pushed the button. So Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia supports the proposed amendments to decisions 19.177 and 19.178 as drafted. We appreciate the work completed to date on trade in stony corals. However, there is still work to be done, particularly on updating conversion factors, as there are significant differences between species of coral in trade. The trade has also undergone large changes since the current conversion factors were published more than 20 years ago. We therefore consider the continuation of Decision 19.177 is critical to the accurate understanding of coral trade across the globe. Australia encourages other coral trading nations, especially coral exporters, to provide information on coral conversion factors to ensure comparisons on coral trade data is consistent and assists in ensuring coral trade is sustainable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. After UK.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would like to echo Australia in welcoming this work. We have been engaged in the extensive discussions of the Animals Committee and Standing Committee on this issue and supported the recommendations agreed at Standing Committee 78. The UK supports the recommendations and draft decisions in this document. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. And now have the European Union.
Gracias, señor presidente. Hablo en nombre de la Unión Europea y de sus Estados miembros. Como han dicho Australia y Reino Unido previamente, nosotros también apoyamos las enmiendas propuestas en la resolución y también pensamos que en la última reunión del Comité de Animales no se ha tratado el tema en profundidad y pensamos que también sería más adecuado que el debate se prolongase durante un proceso más largo entre reuniones. Gracias.
Thank you very much. Okay, so having agreement on the way forward, the Committee 1 accepts the revised decisions 19.177 and 19.78 and the new draft decisions 20AA and 20BB on trade in stony corals contained in Annex 1. It also accepts the amendments to Resolution Conf 11.10, Ref CoP15 on trade in stony corals, and the consequential amendments to Resolution Conf 9.6, Ref CoP19 on trade in readily recognizable parts and derivatives in Annexes 2 and 3, respectively. Before closing, sorry, I think we can also have some two interventions from IGOs and NGOs who have asked for the floor. I haven't seen them, sorry about that, so I will allow you to make two short interventions on this matter and then it will be definitely closed. So European Pet Organization, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me the floor. I'm also speaking on behalf of a number of organisations that represent the global trade in live stony corals and the livelihoods of those that depend on this trade. The current wording of the resolution on trade in stony corals, including changes drafted at the 33rd meeting of the Animals Committee, failed to adequately address the current nature of the coral trade and, if implemented, will create significant barriers to the implementation of CITES for stony corals for traders, management and for law enforcement. In particular, the drafted definition for substrate will create inadvertent non-compliance, as would the lack of provision for the increasing trade in artificial materials. Therefore, we recommend the following change in the wording to the decision 19.178, CoP20, Rev CoP20 little a, which would read, taking into account the progress made at AC 33 and in consultation with coral reef nations and coral reef experts, make further recommendations as necessary on possible amendments to Resolution Conf 1110, Rev CoP15 on the trade in stony corals. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I now have AZA.
Thank you, Chair. And my colleague from the European Pet Organization raised the issue I was going to raise, so I can be even more brief than I planned to be. With regard to the proposed definition of substrate, the definition indicates that substrate is CITES material only if what is attached to it is not CITES listed, and that material must be included on a CITES document. However, if what is attached to it is CITES listed, such as a stony coral or a giant clam, there's no indication of whether that material is or is not CITES listed. This has the effect of defining material as readily recognizable only based on what is attached to it rather than what it actually is. And there's no guidance then as to whether small pieces of coral rock that are attached to CITES specimens should or should not be treated as CITES material, which I'm concerned would lead to disparate enforcement treatment of those specimens and create some implementation challenges. So I think it's an important issue that needs to be taken up. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, ACA, for these comments. I think that they are quite valid comments, but I need to see. I had closed the item, so sorry about that. But maybe if there are parties who are willing to consider these comments and agree to them, we may have to look at it again. Otherwise, I think that there will be the possibility. So if I understand correctly, if in the decision 19178, you are proposing under letter A to take out the restriction on taking into account progress made at ACC and make further recommendation as necessary on possible amendments, you would then take out to the definition of live coral in annex to resolution and so on to make sure that other issues like the ones you raised can also be tackled under this decision. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We'd also like to echo the comments of AZA on this, and we would suggest that adoption of the current drafted definition for substrate should be deferred at the very least until this has had a chance to be looked at.
Thank you. I have Indonesia. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia support the proposal from the European Pet Organization. Thank you.
Thank you. Fiji.
Thank you, Chair. Fiji also supports the recommendation that has just been made. We believe it is a very critical issue, given that this is an ongoing issue back in our country, and we would like this to be considered.
Thank you, Fiji. United States.
Thank you, Chair. The U.S. opposes the proposed amendments. Thank you.
Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Could we please get a clarification? Is the proposed amendments restricted to only looking at the substrate definition, or is it broader? Thank you.
The way I understand it, if we strike out to the definition of live coral in the annex, then if we strike that out, then it is open to possible amendments of the whole resolution. New Zealand?
Yes, we would prefer some other wording that does restrict it to just this one issue about substrate rather than reopen the entire thing again, because it has been well considered at Animals Committee but maybe overlooked this particular issue that has been raised by Pet Association and the EZA.
So we could word it on possible amendments to the definition of live coral and substrate in the Annex 2 resolution. So it would be restricted to live live coral and substrate. The discussion then. Would that be all right for you? United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to agree with the suggestion by New Zealand. Initially, we wanted to restrict this to considering definitions of live specimens, but if to add clarity, we would be happy to add substrate to that list as well. Thank you.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports the suggestion to include the definition of live coral and substrate. Thank you.
And finally, Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Australia also agrees with Canada, New Zealand and the UK.
So we can conclude. I see the United States. You have the floor.
Apologies, Chair. I was just going to chime in to say that we would support that narrowing that you proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are all in agreement that we would accept the draft decision on trade in Stony corals, decision 1978, Ref CoP20, with the amendment in letter A to read on possible amendments to the definition of live coral and substrate in the Annex to Resolution Conf 11.10. Okay, I see. The other agreements are still standing as I read them out, of course. It's not only this one that the committee adopts. Good. With this, I think we can close this agenda item, and we move now to document CoP20, Doc 66.2. On trade in stony corals, trade in asexually produced stony corals. This document has been submitted by Australia, so I give the floor to Australia to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. Given the current and anticipated increase in coral captive breeding under CITES and considering increasing global pressures on coral reefs from climate change and other pressures, Australia is seeking support for the addition of 2 new definitions in Resolution COP 11.10 Rev COP 15, Trade in Stony Corals. The definitions propose simple minimum growth requirements for first and second generation asexually produced corals, such that each specimen must attain at least 50% new growth before first and second generation specimens can be considered born or bred in captivity. The definitions aim to increase clarity and consistent implementation of the Convention. The definitions are informed by Australia's extensive work considering the operational aspects of captively bred coral over several years, engagement with industry, scientists, and information from the CITES Secretariat on the interpretation of bred in captivity definitions. Asexual captive coral breeding occurs in a closed environment where broodstock coral colonies are nurtured in aquaria before being split into fragments and placed onto separate pieces of grow-out substrate. The practice of breaking off coral pieces to aid in the asexual process is commonly referred to as coral fragging. Since submitting Agenda Item 66.2, Australia has identified a minor amendment to both definitions which it would like to table for the consideration of parties. We would replace references to captivity with the phrase a controlled environment in both proposed definitions. If it would be helpful for the Chair and parties, I can read these out. The amended text would consequently read as follows. So the first definition, asexually produced coral born in captivity is considered a first-generation coral if a frag taken from a parent, conceived or taken from the wild, and subsequently grown out in strikeout captivity and replaced with a controlled environment with a minimum of 50% new growth after being cut. In the next definition, the exact same replacement of words would occur. This minor amendment would align the proposed definitions more closely to the definition of captive bred in Resolution Conf 10.16 Rev COP 19 on specimens of animals bred in captivity. The definitions provide flexibility in how parties measure and enforce these requirements, which is important as measurements of growth may differ with coral species and technology and operations in different countries. Without these definitions, there is ambiguity as to what constitutes an F1 or F2 specimen of coral produced through asexual means. If parties support the proposed definitions, it will deliver a whole specimen bred in captivity by the second generation, which we believe remains true to the resolution on specimens bred in captivity and the application of source codes. We encourage parties to support this paper and its intention to assist in improved interpretation of the resolution and facilitate consistent implementation across trading partners. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia, for the introduction of your document. Now I open the floor to parties. I see the United States. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States would first like to thank Australia for its proposal and shares Australia's belief that better clarification and guidance on bred in captivity requirements for stony corals would be beneficial to parties and facilitate consistent implementation of CITES. However, the United States does not support the proposed amendments without further discussion. We believe a better course of action would be to include the development of guidance on this issue in the work of the next intersessional period. The proposed additional definitions in the annex of this document do not appear to capture all the nuances in determining of whether an individual specimen meets the criteria of Resolution COP 1016 Rev COP 19. Additionally, we have technical concerns related to proper terminology and the concept of 50% new growth that would need to be addressed. And addressing the technical concerns that we have would better be suited for an intersessional period rather than here on the committee floor.
Lastly, the proposed definitions, even with Australia's new amendments, are still inconsistent with the information provided for bred in captivity and born in captivity provided in Resolution Comp 1016 Rev COP 19 and Resolution Comp 12.3 Rev COP 19. So we would propose the addition of a draft decision under Decision 19.178 Rev COP 20 in Annex 1 from the previous document 66.1 that we discussed. And if the chair would allow, we would like to read our proposed decision text as a potential way forward.
Thank you, United States. Yes, I will allow you to read it out. Please read it out really slowly so that our slow minds can capture what you are saying.
Thank you, Chair, and apologies if I was reading too fast earlier. So we propose inserting the following. It would be a new little b, taking into account COP20 Doc 66.2 on trade in asexually produced stony corals, comma, make recommendations, comma, as necessary, comma, on potential guidance for bred in captivity requirements for stony corals to facilitate consistent implementation across parties, comma, including whether to propose amendments to Resolution Conf 1110 Rev COP 15 on trade in stony corals, and then renumber the rest of the decision as necessary.
Yes, can you please read it out again so that we have very fast fingers up here, but maybe for parties it would be helpful to have it once more.
Of course, Chair. So we would propose a new little b, taking into account COP20 Doc 66.2 on trade in asexually produced stony coral, comma, make recommendations, comma, as necessary, comma, on potential guidance for bred in captivity requirements for stony corals to facilitate consistent implementation across parties, comma, including whether to propose amendments to Resolution Conf 1110 Rev COP 15 on trade in stony corals, and then renumber as necessary.
United States, formally we have closed the previous document with the decisions in it. So if you submit now a new decision, I think it would have to be a standalone decision, and this, the way I read it, it would need to have some follow-up decisions, because it is probably asking the Animals Committee to do that work, and then the Animals Committee would then submit the recommendations coming out of this to the Standing Committee, and the Standing Committee to the COP. Or also the Animals Committee could also submit it directly to the COP. So, but basically, it would have to be a standalone decision with a choreography, what has to be done by whom. UK, and then I will go back to the United States. UK, you have asked for the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would like to thank Australia for their proposal. The UK is a significant importer of corals, with about 45% originating from Australia. We are beginning to encounter source code C corals from Australia, and so this proposal is both timely and welcomed. As the Secretariat notes, we consider that these amendments to the Annex in Res Conf 1110 Rev CoP15 provide greater clarity on the application of source codes. The UK supports their adoption as drafted, and including the new proposed amendments stated by Australia in their introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, UK. So we note that you are in support of the original document and proposal by Australia. United States.
Thank you, Chair. And I recognize that issue that you were pointing out. It's unfortunate that the documents weren't combined together, and we would have introduced it earlier, but it would have made less sense until after we discussed 66.2. But we are amendable that if other parties also believe that there should be further discussion regarding these definitions and potential guidance in the next intersessional working period, we would be happy to do an in-session document so we can flush it out as a standalone decision, as you suggested, and come back to this later so other parties have a full chance to review what we're proposing. Thank you.
Thank you, United States, for this. I now open the floor to the European Union.
Gracias, señor presidente. La Unión Europea y sus Estados miembros apoya lo que acaba de referir Reino Unido y la propuesta de Australia.
Thank you, European Union. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports the adoption of the original proposed amendments to Resolution COMP 11.10 presented by Australia, including the proposed amendments from Australia. And we feel this does clarify definitions and strengthen consistency in the regulation of trade in asexually produced stony corals, promoting transparent and sustainable implementation of CITES provisions. Thank you.
Then, thank you, Canada. I now have New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. We would also like to add our support to the suggestions made by Australia with the amendments, and as supported by a number of parties already. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. Are there any other parties wishing to take the floor on this matter? I see the Solomon Islands. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Solomon Island is one of the exporting country as well, so we really support the original as proposed or submitted by Australia. Thank you.
Now I have Fiji. Fiji, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Fiji welcomes this proposal put forward by Australia and expresses strong support for the clarification and refinement of definitions relating to coral rock, life rock, and substrate. Chair, this agenda item goes to the heart of ensuring a clear, enforceable, and science-based framework for the management of corals in international trade. For countries like Fiji, where we are also large exporters of coral reef, this really is an issue where precision in terminology is not just a technical exercise, but a fundamental requirement for effective compliance and conservation. So we commend Australia for proposing clear distinctions as well as these definitions, and we support their proposal strongly. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon Islands. I have Samoa. Samoa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Samoa would also like to support the proposal by Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Samoa. Now I would turn back to United States. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for taking the floor once again. I have to stress that the definition for born in captivity really is inconsistent with the information in Resolution Comp 12.3, Rev COP 19. So we would, at a minimum, love it if we could have, after first generation, an insert for subsequent generations, as born in captivity can apply to more than just first generations, as agreed upon already in Resolution 12.3. Thank you, Chair.
Can you please be precise where you want to have it? Would suggest the introduction of what?
It would be, is considered a first generation or subsequent generation coral if a frag is taken and the rest the same as Australia amended.
I would like to go back to Australia to see if they can if they have a view on this proposed change. Australia, you have the floor.
Can I please just get a clarification? So the amendment would be to, let's call it the F1 definition, the asexually produced coral born in captivity, as opposed to the second one, which is the F2 bred in captivity, which at the end of the definition already currently has a sentence which says subsequent generation corals from this point on, i.e. F3, etc., would then be considered third generation and so on. So is your amendment to the F1? Yes? I'm just going to have to take some time to consider how it changes things, Chair.
I didn't hear that last part. Sorry. Myself, I have a question to the United States. I mean, I think that first definition is the definition of a first generation coral. And the second definition then considers second generation corals and so on. So if you add to the first definition of first generation corals or subsequent generations, then I think this doesn't match, because I think the definition of the following generations is the second part. So, yes, United States?
Thank you, Chair. And that's getting at the core of why we thought an intersessional period would be better to hash those out, because just looking at this definition, saying asexually produced coral in captivity is considered a first generation coral makes it assume that a second generation or a third generation coral cannot be born in captivity as well, that a second generation is bred in captivity, and that would not be consistent with what the information already provided in Resolution COMP 12.3, which states that born in captivity is first generation or subsequential generations. So if the intention from Australia is just to say all first generation coral is asexually produced coral born in captivity, and that a second generation and third generation coral could be considered born in captivity and bred in captivity, then there needs to be some restructuring with that definition.
I see Australia, you have the floor.
In reading the terms bred in captivity in Resolution COMP 10.16, I'm in agreement with the Chair that the segregation of the F1 definition and then the F2 definition is actually consistent with the specimens of bred in captivity resolution. I don't see that it's inconsistent.
Okay, so I have my conclusion from what I've heard and the discussion we have had. I think we have a broad support, a large support for the proposed addition of definitions in that document. So I tend to go this way and see, and so my conclusion would be that the Committee 1 accepts the amendments to the annex of Resolution Conf 11.10 Ref CoP15 on trade in Stony corals contained in Annex 1 of the present document as amended by Australia in its introduction. So that's my conclusion of the discussion we have had. Okay, so with this we move on to the next document, which is it's a document, the start of the work of this morning. It's document 86, aquatic species listed in the CITES appendices. So it's mainly seeking support for the deletion of decisions 19189 to 19191. So I open the floor for any comments. I see Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to express its appreciation for the effort. Japan welcomes the general agreement reached at the workshop on aquatic species listed inside its appendices that Resolution Conf 9.24 Rev CoP17 and its footnote 2 provide sufficient flexibility to apply it to relevant commercially exploited aquatic species and do not require text amendments or further clarification. In this regard, Japan supports recommendations contained in this document, including the deletion of the decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. I see New Zealand.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank the European Union for funding the valuable technical workshop that was held on this subject. And even if the conclusion was that the resolution as it currently stands requires no amendment, I still think it was an incredibly valuable workshop because we ended up deciding that the current text provides sufficient flexibility for parties to use to make proposals to amend the appendices with respect to commercially exploited aquatic species, but also for parties to use to make their own assessments of such proposals when we come to consider things at the conference of the parties. So even though it was a no result, I think it's a valuable one. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. So I would now open the floor to IGOs and NGOs and on this document. Seeing none asking for the floor, my conclusion is that Committee 1 notes the report and the recommendations by the Standing Committee and agrees to the deletion of decisions 19189 to 19191. So now the next agenda item is CoP20, Doc 91 on queen conch, Strombus gigas. So parties are invited to indicate if they support the renewal of the decisions. And for this, I would like to open the floor for any comments from parties. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its member states and the Caribbean part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. We fully support the renewal of the decisions as recommended in paragraph 22 of the document. We value the implementation of the decisions for the conservation and management of queen conch, as well as combating illegal trade. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. I now have the Bahamas.
Thank you, Chair. The Bahamas supports the renewal of decisions 19.233 and 19.236. The work covered by these decisions, particularly the NDF guidance and the genetic tools to address IUU fishing, is not yet finished and remains important for all range states. We agree there is a continued need for coordinated regional action and supports the recommendation before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bahamas. I see Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state of the Queen Conch, Antigua and Barbuda supports the the recommendations for the continuance of renewal of decisions 19.233 to 19.236 on the queen conch. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I have Honduras. You have the floor.
Honduras apoya las recomendaciones para abordar la pesca ilegal y seguir con los estudios genéticos que se están realizando en la región.
Thank you. And finally, I have St. Lucia.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, as has been expressed by other range states such as Antigua and Barbuda and the Bahamas, St. Lucia supports the recommendation for the renewal of 19.233 to 19.236 in respect of queen conch. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, St. Lucia. I now open the floor to AGOs and NGOs if they want to make a comment. I see IUCN. IUCN, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair.
We would like to draw CITES party attention to the queen conch, Strombus gigas, that was recently assessed on the IUCN Red List as near threatened and published in October 2025 under the taxonomic name Aloe gigas. Populations of the species have experienced severe local declines. Still, some evidence suggests that the global 30% reduction is uncertain, with some areas showing recent recovery. Trend analysis across 12 range states found no significant declines and some increases in the United States of America, specifically Florida and Jamaica. However, we note that data are insufficient to confirm an overall trend due to regional fluctuations. The species was assessed as near threatened to reflect uncertainty and ongoing risks from fishing pressure. The future status and population trends of the species is dependent on sustained conservation measures. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, IUCN. I now have Colombia. Colombia, you have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Colombia, como parte del país de distribución del caracol pala, apoya la renovación de las decisiones 19.233 a 19.236 para continuar estos trabajos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Colombia. I see nobody else asking for the floor, so my conclusion is that Committee 1 accepts to renew decisions 19.233 to 19.236 on queen conch Strombus gigas. Now the next document is CoP20 Doc 92 on marine ornamental fishes. So the Conference of the Parties is asked to adopt draft decisions 20AA to 20EE on marine ornamental fishes in the annex, and note that the Secretariat is not in favor of the adoption of these decisions as written in the document. So I open the floor for any comments from parties. I see Japan.
Thank you, Chair. Japan would like to express its appreciation for the efforts made by the participants in the marine ornamental fishes workshop to develop the catalog of marine ornamental fish species found in international trade. Japan understands the importance of the conservation and sustainable use and trade of marine ornamental fishes. However, Japan supports the recommendation by the Secretariat not to adapt the draft decisions because the majority of marine ornamental fish species are not CITES-listed species, and assigning such tasks could overload the CITES Secretariat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. I have the European Union.
Gracias, señor presidente. Hablo en nombre de la Unión Europea y sus Estados miembros. Nosotros reconocemos la importancia de mejorar los conocimientos, el seguimiento y las prácticas de gestión relacionadas con las especies de peces ornamentales marinos no incluidas en las CITES, especialmente en el contexto del apoyo al comercio sostenible y los resultados de conservación. Los proyectos de decisión propuestos proporcionan un marco constructivo que puede orientar el trabajo futuro en este ámbito y los consideramos aceptables, entendiendo que su aplicación sigue siendo flexible y no impone cargas administrativas o financieras indebidas a las partes. Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, European Union. I have Brazil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ornamental species are highly sought after in international trade. Thus, Brazil considers important to adopt the draft decisions included in the annex so that the topic can continue within the convention, allowing progress towards future proposals to include species identified as high priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Now I have Sudan.
Thank you, Chair. Our delegation from the region on the Red Sea support the draft decision in document 92. They will help us trace where wild marine ornamental fish come from and give us the basic information we need to manage the trade responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudan. Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monaco remercie pour le travail fourni par les experts et par le Comité pour les animaux. Les données et leur communication sont importantes pour développer les connaissances sur les poissons marins ornementaux et leur commerce. Monaco appuie donc l'adoption des projets de décision. Merci.
And now we have Tanzania.
Thank you, Chair. The United Republic of Tanzania commends the efforts made by the Animal Committee on preparing the information included in the document. And as such, since the marine ornamental fishes are not cited listed, most of them, Tanzania aligns itself with the recommendations by the Secretariat and encourage the parties to share any methods or analytical tools to improve traceability and sustainability of the international trade of marine ornamental fishes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tanzania. I have Bahrain.
Bahrain thanks the Secretariat for the excellent work on marine ornamental fishes and for organizing the technical workshops and the catalog of species. Bahrain supports the view of the Secretariat that the existing resolutions and decisions already give parties and the Animal Committee enough tools to work on non-CITES listed marine ornamental fishes. Bahrain also agrees that parties can bring in new analytical tools and methods directly to the Animal Committee without the need for additional decisions. Bahrain, therefore, supports the recommendations of the Secretariat not to adopt the new draft decisions in document CoP20.92, while encouraging parties to make full use of the workshop outcomes and the available FAO and other databases, improve national management and monitoring of marine ornamental fishes and trade. Thank you.
And now I have Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada appreciates the work of the Animals Committee, and we understand the intent of the draft decisions. However, Canada does oppose adopting these decisions, as we are concerned with creating decisions for voluntary data collection and species prioritization, given the increasing workload facing the committees, the Secretariat, and the parties. Canada supports deleting decisions 19.237 to 19.238. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I have Argentina.
Gracias, señor presidente. Argentina apoya este documento. Las decisiones basadas en un taller mundial de expertos de CITES instan a las partes a aplicar las recomendaciones al Comité de Fauna, especialmente respecto de declarar el comercio internacional de peces ornamentales marinos por especie. Un mejor seguimiento contribuirá a cerrar importantes brechas de información y a promover una gestión científica eficiente y preventiva. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Now I would like to open the floor to Iran.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to thank you and the government of Uzbekistan. Regarding the subject, we would like to support Bahrain's statement.
Thank you. Now I have Indonesia. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia will support the recommendation of the Secretariat. Thank you.
Thank you. St. Lucia.
Thank you very much, Chair. St. Lucia supports the deletion of decisions 19.237 and 19.238, and also supports the Secretariat's decision not to renew the adoption of the decisions on marine ornamental species for the reasons outlined. Thank you very much, Chair.
And now Comoros.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Nous appuyons les recommandations du secrétariat. Merci beaucoup.
I see Switzerland. Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. In light of the excessive workload in the various committees and the resulting discussions on renunciation planning and prioritization, as discussed in CoP20 Doc 14, we do not believe that this document has a high priority in this convention, as the majority of ornamental fish are not listed in CITES, as the Secretariat has correctly noted. However, we believe that the workshop that was held provided important insights and therefore propose, as a compromise, that decision 20EE be retained in the document. This decision has no impact on committees, but can assist parties in identifying high-priority species that may be proposed for a listing at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. So you are proposing to delete all decisions besides, and only retain 20EE. Good. I see the United States. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As one of the primary importers of marine ornamental fishes, the United States believe there is a need to help ensure that harvest and trade in these species is both legal and ecologically sustainable. We were an active participant in the technical workshop, and we do support the draft decisions found in the annex to the document, and we support deletions of decisions 19.237 and 19.238 as they have been implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. Israel.
Thank you, Chair. As was stated by other parties, the trade in marine ornamental fishes has been an issue for many years, and we see that there was a lot of information at the technical workshop, which we attended, which shows a lack of information available on this trade. We support the United States and other parties that believe that these decisions should all be maintained and adopted. Regards Switzerland's proposal to maintain only decision 20EE, if that is in the end the decision of this committee, we would suggest a small change in wording, and in any case to 20EE. And at the last line where it says, and identify species of high priority, which may warrant further research or other considerations, and the text we wish to add would be, comma, such as an Appendix 3 listing, comma, and then as appropriate. So we would add the words after other considerations, comma, such as an Appendix 3 listing. So in all cases, whether we accept all the decisions or only 20EE, we would propose to add that text to that last decision, please.
I now have New Zealand. New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank Australia for hosting this important workshop. New Zealand's preference would be to retain the 5 decisions as presented, but if we were to be reducing the scope of the workload of the committees in the future, we would suggest retaining both 20DD and 20EE. 20DD asks parties to, wherever possible, to record the trade in ornamental fish at the species level and make use of the FAO's existing global fisheries and aquaculture statistics databases. I think it's important to note that often these fish are traded in sort of bucket loads with mixed species, and we really don't have species-specific information and therefore can't follow the trends of those species either in trade or in the wild. So 20DD seems quite important, not a task aimed at the committees, but at the parties to bear that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I have now Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Our preference is to retain all 5 of the decisions. However, as a compromise, we agree with New Zealand and could support the retention of DD and EE with the deletion of other decisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. I have now Niger.
Merci bien, Monsieur le Président. La République du Niger soutient donc cette proposition de document. Merci.
I have the European Union.
Gracias, señor presidente. Como los que han hablado anteriormente, también preferimos mantener todas las decisiones, pero compromiso. Apoyamos lo dicho por Israel, lo que ha añadido a la primera decisión, 20AA, y también lo que ha añadido Nueva Zelanda sobre la 20DD y la 20EE. De retenerlos. Gracias.
I now open the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada supports the suggestion of New Zealand and Australia to retain 20DD and 20EE. Thank you.
Okay, to summarize, we have lots of parties who are in favor of retaining all the decisions. We have lots of parties who are in opposition to any decision, and we have some parties who would be in agreement on a compromise to retain just 20DD and 20EE with the amendment as proposed by Israel to add at the end as other considerations such as an Appendix 3 listing as appropriate. If we want to go for that compromise, I would need to hear some more parties supporting that compromise. At the moment, we have 3 parties in favor of such a compromise, and I suppose Switzerland would also agree on the compromise to retain DD and EE. UK, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would support that compromise. Thank you.
United States.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say that the United States would also accept this compromise. Thank you.
Senegal.
Elle aussi accepte ce compromis.
Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci. La Côte d'Ivoire soutient également ce compromis.
Tanzania.
We also would like to support the compromise. Thank you.
I see China.
Thank you, Chair. China supports the compromise. Thank you.
I have now Nigeria.
Nigeria will also like to support the compromise, Chair.
St. Lucia.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, recognizing at the end of the comments by the Secretariat that the implementation of the decisions is expected to have limited workload and implications for the Secretariat and the Animals Committee, as well as not expected to require external budget, St. Lucia is prepared to support the compromise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Zambia.
Thank you, Chair. Zambia does support the compromise. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Saudi Arabia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. We also in support of retaining 20 DD and 20 EE. Thank you.
Palau.
Thank you, Chair. We support the compromise. Thank you.
And finally, Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya support the compromise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, but before we close the item, I also would like to give NGOs and IGOs shortly the floor because before I conclude. So, Fondation Franz Weber.
Thank you, Chair. We are making this intervention on behalf of Fondation Franz Weber and 16 other organizations, and I will provide the intervention with names of all NGOs. Coral reefs across the globe are collapsing at unprecedented rates, putting countless species and livelihoods at risk. These critical ecosystems are highly threatened by climate change, pollution, and also trade in coral reef species. Among the species most affected are marine ornamental fishes. Around 3,000, mostly wild-caught species, as identified by the IUCN, are currently in trade, many harvested for over a century with almost no monitoring or protection. Because species-level reporting is largely absent, it is difficult to assess impacts or ensure sustainable trade. Adapting these draft decisions, or at least 20 DD and 20 EE, by the Animals Committee would encourage species-level reporting, including origin and source. This would provide urgent science-based data needed for transparent management. Future proposals should also rely on trade data, but when that data is missing, it is a vicious circle that arises. Without trade data, there is never enough information to even begin drafting proposals, making systematic data collection essential. Despite the workshop's identification of numerous species that warrant consideration for CITES protections, there were no ornamental fish proposals submitted for consideration at this COP. We therefore thank parties who expressed encouragement for Appendix 3 listing, as there are species that are regionally threatened, some even regionally endangered, and these parties consider submitting proposal to COP21 to include these species in Appendix 3 as an urgent first step towards their conservation and long-term preservation. Lastly, these decisions add little to the workload of Secretariat or Animals Committee, as noted by the Secretariat's own observations. The recommendations simply invite parties to provide information. It would have been regrettable if all efforts and fundings allocated since the parties accepted in 2019 a proposal to examine this trade, including a technical workshop in Australia, ended there with
Franz Weber,
limited
can you conclude?
To no conservation outcome. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. I open the floor now to a European pet organization, then I will wrap up.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me the floor. I'm also speaking on behalf of a number of organisations that represent pet industry and keeper communities, as well as the tens of thousands of individuals worldwide who are wholly dependent on ornamental fisheries for their livelihoods. We welcome the opportunity to contribute to the knowledge sharing and recommendations of the technical workshop on marine ornamental fishes, kindly hosted by Australia and effectively chaired by our current chair, here, Matthias Lercher. The importance of sustainable marine ornamental fisheries for people's livelihoods and for conservation was highlighted, with multiple participants noting the potential risks of inappropriate or ill-advised management of these fisheries. We welcome the outputs of the workshop, which in a large part represented positive and appropriate considerations for the future management of these fisheries, which we will seek to implement where appropriate in order to ensure its long-term sustainable future. An outcome important for those trading in these species, the livelihoods of those working in the fishery, and for those populations of species themselves. The workshop identified the need for improved data and research to better understand the vulnerability and sustainability of species populations. We are pleased to support such research such as productivity susceptibility analysis highlighted in AC33 Inf Doc 29, which is the potential to inform future proportionate management measures which, in the words of workshop recommendations, are context-specific and take into account the socio-economic factors of all relevant stakeholders. However, we have concerns that some of the recommendations made do not take appropriate account of other non-CITES controls that already exist and would place unnecessary burdens on parties, traders, and fishers with no clear conservation gains. Given this, and that the majority of the relevant species are not CITES listed, we support the recommendations of the Secretariat to not adopt the drafted decisions. However, we could live with the amendments as drafted, not with the additions suggested by Israel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So, after having listened, and especially in relation to the compromise proposal, my take is that the Committee 1 accepts decisions 20DD and 20EE as amended by Israel and also agrees to the deletion of decisions 19237 and 19238. Okay, thank you very much. So now we move back to proposals, but before we do so, we have to do some reshuffling up here. So give us 3 minutes to get rearranged, and then we will be back with proposal 35 on eels. Okay, so with this, we turn our attention to COP20 Proposal 35 on Anguilla SPP, anguillate eels. The proposal is to include all anguillate eels in Appendix 2 with an entry into effect delayed by 18 months. This proposal has been submitted by the European Union and Panama, and I would like to invite the European Union to introduce the document. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The European Union and its member states, together with Panama, propose the inclusion of all non-CITES listed species of the genus Anguilla in Appendix 2. Eels live in rivers across 6 continents, yet must migrate to remote oceans to spawn. Since they cannot be bred in captivity, every eel we eat comes from the wild, making them vulnerable to overfishing and illegal trade. Today, 99% of eels eaten globally are from threatened species. Our proposal, therefore, responds to widely recognized conservation concerns for anguillid eels and aims to address the long-standing enforcement challenges that have limited the effectiveness of the European eels Appendix 2 listing since 2009. Despite the EU's export ban on European eels since 2010, authorities continue to seize large quantities of illegally traded juvenile eels destined for aquaculture farms in East Asia. These seizures show that traffickers exploit regulatory gaps between listed and non-listed Anguilla species by mixing them or mislabeling shipments. Because glass eels and processed products make up most international trade, and because Anguilla species cannot be reliably distinguished by morphology, customs officers cannot identify species without costly, time-consuming laboratory testing. All Anguilla species therefore meet the lookalike criterion. Beyond these shared enforcement challenges, populations of the 3 main temperate species in trade, European, American, and Japanese eels, have all suffered major historical declines and remain heavily depleted. Persistent illegal trade in the United States, Canada, Japan, and elsewhere continues to add pressure. Both the non-listed American eel and Japanese eel are categorized as endangered by the IUCN due to declines exceeding 50% across their ranges over 3 generations. For Japanese eel, catch per unit effort data for yellow and silver eels revealed declines of 80 to 90% in 7 of 8 datasets in Japan, and national assessments confirm a long-term decrease. Demand for American eel has intensified, and a recent stock assessment found the East Coast population of the US remains depleted, while the species is still considered threatened in Canada. Therefore, aside from meeting the lookalike criterion, these 2 species also meet criterion B. Eel declines stem from multiple interacting pressures: overharvesting, habitat loss, migration barriers, pollution, and climate change. Yet there is clear consensus on one point. Harvest for international trade is a major driver of decline, and is precisely this pressure CITES is mandated to address. Eel trade is global, interconnected, and highly responsive to scarcity. Declines in one species trigger increased exploitation of another, a documented pattern observed from Japanese to European to American eels. Therefore, if we do not act together now, history risks repeating itself. The supply chain links fisheries in Americas, Europe, and Asia through complex legal and illegal networks, ultimately to serve high demand for glass eels in East Asian aquaculture. Processed products circulate widely, with eels often caught in one region, farmed in another, and processed or re-exported elsewhere. This complexity proves a simple truth. No single action alone can secure the future of the species. National measures and species-by-species regulation cannot keep pace with a dynamic transboundary supply chain. Only internationally coordinated regulation, through listing all Anguilla species in Appendix 2, can ensure trade is legal, traceable, and sustainable. This proposal does not prohibit trade. It is designed to protect existing, legal, well-managed fisheries and the communities that depend on them, while closing loopholes that currently benefit criminal networks and undermine legitimate operators. An 18-month implementation delay will allow parties to adapt management systems and ensure a smooth transition. Supporting this proposal means contributing meaningfully to the global recovery of these ecologically, economically, and culturally important species for the present generation and for those that will inherit the consequences of our decisions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, European Union. I now open the floor to parties. I see the United States. United States, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state of American eel, the United States continues to have concerns about the illegal trade in Anguilla species. Given prevalence of these species in international trade, coupled with recent investigations conducted by our law enforcement colleagues that have shed light on illicit trade activities in Anguillid eels. However, our states and tribes have strong management measures in place to combat illegal trafficking and ensure sustainable use of American eel, and we are proud of their efforts. Additionally, on October 9, 2025, the Secretariat issued a notification to the parties indicating that the amendment as requested by the Dominican Republic to include American eel in Appendix 3 will take effect on January 7th. Given this development, we believe inclusion of American eel in Appendix 3, coupled with adoption of a strong resolution on Anguillid eels under Item 87 should be sufficient to ensure continued sustainable use and legal trade in these species and prevent the need to include the entire genus in Appendix 2. CITES Appendix 3 documentation and successful implementation will also prevent adverse impacts on other CITES listed eels from any look-alike concerns, particularly for European eel, while also addressing challenges faced by law enforcement personnel. Furthermore, the concept of an 18-month delay into entry into force for this proposal is indication that this is not ready for decision at this time. Therefore, the United States strongly opposes inclusion of Anguilla species in Appendix 2 at this time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States. I have now the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom recognises concerns raised by range states and agrees that these require careful consideration, particularly regarding implementation. Uncertainties remain regarding population abundance and trends, although we note the significant global trade in Anguillid eels and the interconnected nature of this trade across species. Their conservation statuses are similarly interlinked, whereby depletions or trade restrictions in one species can result in increased exploitation of others. Evidence suggests that declines in recruitment of Japanese eel and the restrictions in place for trade of European eel have resulted in the American eel and tropical eel species being targeted replacements. Identification challenges are also substantial. Distinguishing specimens of American and Japanese eel Distinguishing specimens of American and Japanese eel from European eel is extremely difficult across species, life stages, and specimen types, particularly glass eels and elvers. We commend the progress made in rapid DNA analysis, but acknowledge that this is not a tool that is widely accessible to all parties involved in this global trade at this stage. On this basis, we consider that the lookalike criterion under Annex 2B is met and support the inclusion of the entire genus Anguilla under CITES. We note the significant overlap of this proposal with the draft resolution in Document 87, which contains a draft resolution covering all Anguillid eel species. The UK is open to considering this proposal in conjunction with the draft resolution and decisions contained in Document 87. To this end, we would request that the Chair not conclude the discussion of this proposal until the committee has had a chance to consider Document 87. Thank you.
Thank you, United Kingdom. I have now Kuwait.
Thank you, Chair. Kuwait fully aligned with the joint statement submitted by some Asian party as in Document 64. We strongly support the position led by Japan, India, Indonesia, the Republic of Korea, Laos, BDR, and Singapore. The scientific evidence before us is clear. Both the Secretariat assessment and the FAO expert panel conclude that international trade is not the case of declines in Anguilla population. This means that proposal 35 does not meet the biological criteria or trade criteria required for an Appendix 2 listing under CITES. Decisions of this conference must be grounded in evidence, not assumptions. We are also concerned that listing all Angola species will create unnecessary regulatory burden, disturbed lawful and well-managed fisheries, and internationally put pressure on the communities whose livelihood depend on the sustainable harvest. Such measures may even increase intensities of illegal fishing by pushing a legal industry into unclarity. Kuwait emphasized that conservation must be effective, science-based, and appropriate. We stand ready to work with all the parties to strengthen sustainable management, improve monitoring tools, including rapidly deployable DNA kits, and support responsible trade practices. For these reasons, Kuwait cannot support Proposal 35. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kuwait. I now have Japan.
Thank you, Chair. As a range state of Japanese eel, Japan strongly opposes this proposal for the following reasons. First, this proposal is not supported by science. Not only FAO, but also CITES Secretariat have concluded that Japanese eel and American eel do not meet the listing criteria of population decline. Therefore, basic foundation of this proposal has already been lost. Regarding the look-alike criteria, species identification of juveniles is a routine practice in Japan. Moreover, simple and quick DNA identification kit is now available, as reported by Canada and the Republic of Korea. This newly developed technology makes Appendix 2 listing as look-alike species unnecessary. Second, this proposal transfers regulatory burden to other countries than the proponents. ICES has been advising zero catch for European eel every year since 2000. However, in reality, European eel production has almost doubled in several EU member states. In such a situation, it is the primary responsibility of EU itself to address their own problem. It is unreasonable to impose regulation on other countries. Third, this proposal undermines the objectives of CITES. If this proposal is adopted, it will impose burdens on all CITES parties for eel species which are distinguishable and not endangered. This unbalanced and excessive regulation will pressure limited resources for other truly endangered species. Lastly, Japan sees cross-regional opposition from wide-range states from Asia and beyond. This demonstrates how unreasonable Proposal 35 is. Japan strongly believes that CoP20 will make a wise judgment by rejecting this proposal.
And to that end, we just heard the proposal by the United Kingdom on discussing 35 with 87 together. But our notion is for 35, we do not have any consensus here on the ground. But on 87, we are most likely having a good discussion. So our notion is we need to separate those two. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. I have now Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Zimbabwe makes this statement on behalf of the Africa Group, which comprises 50 parties to CITES. Chair, Africa notes proposal COP20, proposal 35 on anguilla species submitted by the European Union and Panama to include all non-CITES species of the genus Anguilla in CITES Appendix 2 for consideration by CoP20. Chair, the EU proposal affects all Anguilla species worldwide and is particularly detrimental to eel conservation in Africa and the Africa-Pacific region, where various Anguilla species are fished and cultivated. The proposal unjustifiably shifts administrative burden of addressing illegal trade of European eel to other countries, disproportionately affecting the Asia-Pacific region and Africa, especially to small-scale fishers and aquaculture farmers. Chair, the Africa Group notes with concern that the document is not grounded in scientific evidence, as it just proposes a blanket listing, ignoring that the population size of Japanese eel has recovered since 1990 and that Japanese eel is not facing the risk of extinction. This blanket listing approach creates risks of malalignment in implementation and potential dilution of the principles of sustainable use under the convention. The Africa Group therefore strongly opposes the EU proposal of listing all freshwater eels to Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. In light of this, that the whole African region is in opposition to this proposal, I have a very long list. So if the other African parties would be willing to withdraw their request to speak, that would be very helpful. So that we can reduce that long list that we have to look at, because we have heard that the whole African region is in opposition. So we have taken note of that. I would like to open now the floor to Australia.
Thank you, Chair. Australia recognises the environmental, cultural and economic importance of anguillid eels to range states, including Australia. Anguillid eels have been culturally and economically significant species to Indigenous Australians for many thousands of years. While we recognise concerns about the status of Japanese and American eels, we also recognise the challenges in implementing an Appendix 2 listing for these species. Illegal trade in European eels has continued to be challenging since the species listing in Appendix 2 over a decade ago. We are concerned that listing of these species may shift trade pressure away from countries with robust and well-established eel fishery management practices towards parties which do not yet have robust management arrangements in place, and consequently increase the potential for unsustainable harvest. Similarly, if the whole genus is listed as lookalikes, many range states are likely to struggle with development of NDFs and therefore result in increased risk of IUU fishing. After considering the risks and benefits associated with listing all species within the genus Anguilla, we consider the more effective approach to global anguillid eel conservation is for the COP to adopt the resolution introduced in Agenda Item 87, as it is drafted to include all anguillid eels. The actions called for in the resolution will allow parties to improve understanding of anguillid eel management and trade, and make any listings of anguillid eels in the future easier to implement. We therefore urge parties to adopt the resolution to address the challenges of global anguillid eel conservation in line with CITES principles. In summary, while we note the continued challenges associated with anguillid eel management and trade, we do not support the current proposal. However, we urge parties to continue to work together to improve anguillid eel management and conservation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. I have the Philippines.
Thank you, Chair. The Philippines would like to share its position regarding Anguilla species. We do not support a genus-level CITES listing of this species, Chair. The trade of Anguilla bicolor pacifica, Anguilla luzonensis, and Anguilla marmorata is critical to the livelihoods of many local communities in the Philippines, and a genus-level listing could disproportionately impact these populations. However, Mr. Chair, we recognize the assessment that lists Anguilla bicolor pacifica as near threatened, and the Philippines is taking decisive steps to ensure the sustainable management of this species. National measures are already in place, including strict controls on the trade of glass eels under 15 centimeters, which demonstrates our commitment to conservation and the long-term sustainability of these populations. We also encourage eel-importing countries to support our efforts by preventing the importation of illegally traded glass eels, especially those under 15 centimeters, which are prohibited under Philippine law. Mr. Chair, the Philippines remains committed to evidence-based conservation in line with CITES principles, which support the long-term conservation of Anguilla species. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. Monaco.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le commerce de ces espèces est important, la distinction semble difficile. Donc Monaco appuie cette inscription avec l'entrée en vigueur retardée. Et je ne sais pas si c'est prématuré, mais un vote serait peut-être à provoquer. Et si ce vote était fait, ce serait à bulletin secret, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
Thank you, Monaco. We are not quite there yet. I have now Canada. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada is committed to the sustainable management of the eel fisheries and recognizes the social, cultural, and economic importance of American eel and glass eels to Indigenous communities across Canada. Canada opposes the proposal to list all eels of the species of the genus Anguilla, including Japanese eel and American eels, under Appendix 2. The proposal does not fully meet the biological and trade criteria for listing. A 2025 Government of Canada scientific assessment indicates, consistent with previous assessments, that abundance of American eel in Canada has remained relatively stable for the last 2 decades under robust management. Additionally, though the proposal puts forward that all eels should be listed as it is difficult to distinguish lookalikes in trade, it does not take sufficiently into account recent scientific advances in rapid DNA identification kits. Canada's commitment to sustainable glass eel fisheries management is demonstrated by our robust regulations, including the requirement for glass eel possession and export licenses. The regulation also requires separation of Canadian and foreign caught glass eels during storage and export, and mandate government notification upon possession of imported ones. Canada will continue to work with parties to promote increased coordination, data sharing, and traceability in the trade through the draft resolution document 87. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Canada. I now have UAE, and I still have 18 parties wishing to speak, so please be brief as possible, so that we have then an overall view of the room, and I will then be able to propose a way forward. So, UAE, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The scientific assessment of the Secretariat and FIO are clear. Japanese eel and American eel do not meet the biological criteria for Appendix 2, and extending the listing to all Angola species on lookalike grounds is not justified. Enforcement challenges have been overstated. Rapid species identification tests are commercially available, and illegal trade in European eels has been successfully detected and indicated under the current listing. Range states managing Japanese and American eels have established effective management systems, including quotas and closed seasons, and their populations are assessed. Expanding the listing would not deliver additional conservation benefits. Instead, such a measure would create unnecessary compliance burdens. For these reasons, we do not support the proposal.
Thank you. Republic of Korea.
Thank you, Chair. The Republic of Korea opposed listing the entire angular genus in CITES Appendix 2 for several reasons. First, the FAO expert panel concluded that listing all angular species does not meet the criteria. Second, East Asian range status, including the Republic of Korea, jointly manage eel resources through data sharing, glacial release, and habitat restoration project, demonstrating effective regional cooperation. Third, the Republic of Korea has developed a rapid on-site identification kit to distinguish look-alike eel species within 20 minutes. Finally, listing all species could create over-regulation, potentially harming legal fisheries and voluntary management activities. Also, the Republic of Korea does not want to merge Proposal 35 and Agenda Item 87. Since Proposal 35 was submitted in June, it's possible social and economic effects on Korean society were expected to be significant. For this reason, we have spent a great deal of time reviewing the proposal and talking with many stakeholders. We cannot change this direction of the discussion suddenly, so we could therefore like to follow the plain process to discuss Proposal 35 and Agenda Item 87 separately in this order as originally scheduled. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Korea. I have now Mauritania.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Vu que la Mauritanie prend la parole pour la première fois, je commencerai par des remerciements à l'endroit de l'Ouzbékistan pour avoir accueilli cette 20e COP et nous offrir ce cadre agréable de travail. Alors, de quoi s'agit-il? Il s'agit d'un déclin. Le constat est qu'il y a un déclin de l'anguille, en tout cas européenne, malgré son inscription en annexe 2 depuis 2009 déjà. Mais il faut dire que cette situation, elle n'est pas générale. Il y a quand même des parties du globe où, disons, des évaluations font état de résultats très probants et que même les espèces qui sont autres que l'anguilla anguilla se comportent très bien et que les résultats sont quand même très probants. Alors, pour information, récemment, dans notre pays, la Mauritanie, il y a des observations qui font état d'indices de présence de civelles dans notre zone sud, et ce qui constituerait en tout cas une opportunité nouvelle pour nous, pour notre pays, je dirais, pour réussir, en tout cas mieux réussir sa souveraineté alimentaire, mais aussi son développement socio-économique. Considérant que cette proposition, même si elle trouve sa raison dans le manque d'efficacité de la proposition, du moins de la mesure déjà en vigueur et qui est appliquée et qui n'a pas donné de résultat, mais elle ne justifie en aucun cas de généraliser, disons, cette mesure au taxon supérieur, c'est-à-dire au genre. Ce qui serait d'ailleurs une injustice à l'endroit des pays qui ont quand même consenti d'énormes efforts et dont les résultats sont aujourd'hui très probants. Je parle de la région asiatique où quand même les évaluations montrent une situation beaucoup plus reluisante que celle de l'anguilla anguilla en Europe. Alors, considérant également que, en tout cas, cette proposition, la proposition 35, ne rencontre pas, elle n'est pas totalement alignée aux recommandations des résultats du groupe de travail des experts de la FAO, qui a tenu bien sûr 2 réunions récemment, entre le 7 et le 11 à Bangkok, mais aussi le 21 au 25 juillet à Rome, et qui sont des données très récentes. Donc, ne pas s'aligner à ces données nous semble également quelque chose d'incongru pour en tout cas faire de telles propositions. Alors, donc, nous ne voyons pas aussi, il n'est pas si évident, en tout cas, que cette proposition soit bien alignée avec la procédure habituelle pour inscrire de telles espèces en annexe 2. Donc, d'ailleurs, cette mesure, cette proposition ne garantit en rien l'efficacité de la préservation, même si elle était en tout cas généralisée de telle façon. Plutôt, elle a un corollaire d'effet contraire à ce qui est escompté. Et compte tenu de tout cela, la Mauritanie ne supporte pas, en tout cas, cette proposition 35 et s'y oppose fermement. Et nous réitérons également, en tout cas, notre alignement et nous soutenons fortement la position qu'on a déjà exprimée dans le cadre, en tout cas, de la déclaration faite par les États africains. Merci.
Thank you, Mauritania. India.
Thank you, Chair. India not supports a genus-level listing of Angula in the CITES 2 appendix. Any consideration should be based on a species and site-specific assessment, and placing the whole genus Angula into the CITES appendix should not be considered for listing. We insist to carry out individual species-specific assessment vis-a-vis geographical factors, abundance, and threats before any consideration. So listing of the whole Angula genus is not justified, not based on scientifically established reasoning, and listing a whole genus is premature at this stage. India also supports Japan's stand on the proposal and the joint statement, and India rejects the proposal 35 with regard to listing a whole Angula genus in the CITES Appendix 2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, India. Fiji.
Thank you, Chair. Fiji wishes to express its deep appreciation to the proponents for the significant work undertaken in compiling this proposal. Chair, having carefully reviewed the proposal, the scientific uncertainties raised, and the potential implications for management frameworks already in place, Fiji aligns with the comments made by Japan, the UK, and Zimbabwe on behalf of the African group. We also heard US and UK speak to the possible amendments to draft resolution in document 87 for the proposal to be jointly considered. While we see merits in this recommendation, we do echo the comments made by Japan and Korea. In particular, Fiji likes to highlight three particular points. One, existing regional management measures for these eel species are still evolving and in some cases have not been fully assessed for effectiveness. Moving to list the entire genus under Appendix 2 at this stage may outpace the evidence base and the management system currently under development. Second, several aspects of stock status and population trends remain inconclusive, including for some species where data is limited or absent. Fiji believes CITES listings must be grounded in clear, comprehensive, and globally representative data. Third, a precautionary but proportionate approach should prioritize strengthened data collection, improve monitoring, and enhance cooperation among range states before introducing new trade controls that may have broad and unintended consequences for sustainable livelihoods and customary practices. Chair, Fiji remains committed to evidence-based conservation that is in line with CITES principles. We consider that genus-level listing of these species is not adequately justified. As such, Fiji does not support the current proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Fiji. I now see China. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. China resonates with the interventions of parties that oppose the proposal, particularly Korea and Canada. As the Secretary and the FAO assessments of the proposal have rightly pointed out, there is no sufficient evidence to support the inclusion of Japanese eel and American eel. The inclusion of all Angula species for look-alike reason is unfounded. There is no difficulty in enforcing the current listing of only the European eel. Quick tests for eel species identification are already commercially available. Smuggling of European eels can be and has been detected and prosecuted. Current populations of Japanese eel and American eel are stable. Stringent management plans, including quotas and closed seasons, are already in place and are working effectively to ensure biological sustainable use of both species. Inclusion of all Angula species will only disrupt a production that is already sustainable and overburden developing countries with unnecessary compliance requirement. Subsistence producers of eels would suffer from what would amount to an overall abundance of precaution. There is no added conservation benefits with this proposal, and if accepted, will only have a negative impact on livelihoods. For the aforementioned reasons, China opposes this proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, China. I would like to remind everybody what I said at the first day. If we have a very long list and I see that it is going into one direction, I will have to close the list. And I will do so now because I have not heard any support for this proposal besides one party. And I don't think that this picture will change. So I would like to ask all parties who are in opposition to that proposal to get out of that list, to stop their microphone, so that if there are still parties who are in support of that party, I can hear them as well. Because I have now seen overwhelming opposition to the proposal so far, so please take yourselves off the list if you are against the proposal. That will allow us to advance rapidly and come to a conclusion. Okay, now I open the floor to Papua New Guinea. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving Papua New Guinea the opportunity to speak. Since this is the first time PNG is taking the floor at this meeting, we extend our sincere gratitude to the government and people of Uzbekistan for their hospitality and also the Secretary for the excellent arrangement of this meeting. Chair, Papua New Guinea would like to support the intervention by Japan and others and do not support the proposal to list all non-CITES Anguilla species in Appendix 2. The proposal lacks sufficient scientific basis, and PNG is concerned that this blanket listing would place unnecessary administrative and trade burdens on regions such as Asia Pacific, especially on small-scale fishery and aquaculture operators. We also note that proposal does not sufficiently reflect the different population status of eel species, including those that have shown signs of recovery. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Papua New Guinea. I have one party left. Israel, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, as a range state for the European eel, we support the European Union's proposal as presented here. We would also say that there was a proposal to suspend discussion and to move to discussion of the document 87 before we make a decision on this listing proposal. It may have been a suggestion and not actually a motion. If it were a motion, then it would have to be determined right away whether we actually do that. So I think it was just a suggestion to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Israel. I also took it as such, and it was my intention, if there was strong views on parties to merge these two issues, then we would do so, but I haven't heard very strong support on that. That's why I think it's better that we deal now with the proposal and come then, based on the results, to the resolution, which will help us also shape the discussion and the resolution itself. That was my intent anyway. So having listened, I would like to go back to the EU and see how they see how you want to proceed. I do have a proposal, but I would also like to hear the EU as the proponent, what they take out of this discussion so far. So EU, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Of course, we've listened carefully to the discussion. I think that the arguments that have been advanced by some parties would merit further discussion. In particular, we believe that the the scientific case that has been commented is for our proposal is very strong, that there are issues around the FAO study, which has been mentioned by many parties, in particular as regards the lookalike criterion, the international trade as a driver of decline, and we think that there is other valid scientific literature which would point in a different direction, including from some distinguished academic sources in Japan. Therefore, we would like to maintain our proposal, and if need be, we will, of course, participate in the vote. We are also open to the suggestion of Monaco to hold that vote secretly, if that would help. Thank you.
I see Japan. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We have heard from Monaco that in case of voting, they would prefer the secret ballot. And Japan also would like to request, if it's the voting right now, under the Rules of Procedure, Rule 27, to request a secret balloting. Thank you.
Thank you. You are jumping ahead a bit, but I was gonna, based on what the EU was saying, I was gonna say we have to go to a vote, and I've heard there is a wish for having a secret ballot. So according to the rules, I need 10 parties who second that, and based on the, wait, I'm not, you don't have to push now. So based on the real resolution, I need to have 10 parties seconding that motion, and based on what the Bureau has decided this week, I will then read out the names of the parties who are seconding. So if you press the button, please leave it on until I have read out your name. So now I need 10 parties to second to have a secret ballot. It's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, good. It's enough. Okay, good. Stop. Okay, I have Republic of Korea, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Fiji, Kuwait, Iceland, Nigeria, Grenada, St. Lucia, Central African Republic, Côte d'Ivoire, European Union, Lebanon, Japan, Monaco, China, Palau, Sri Lanka, Russian Federation, United UAE, Saudi Arabia, Mauritania. Stop.
Well, they don't know. They don't know.
Laos, Cambodia, Madagascar, India, Gabon, DRC, Burkina Faso, Iran, and that's it. I think that's enough parties, so we will proceed to a secret ballot. Okay, technicians, are you ready? So please all get seated. All get seated, no walking around, please. Yes, yes. And please be sure that you have inserted your voting card correctly into the microphone. Can you please get seated? Okay. So this is a vote for proposal number 35 on to include all anguillate eels in Appendix 2 with an entry into force, with a delay of entry into force by 18 months. If you vote yes, you support this proposal. If you vote no, you are opposing this proposal. The voting type is by secret ballot. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the delegation of the EU. And since this is a proposal for amendment of appendices, the decision will be adopted by a 2/3 majority. Are you ready, technicians? Okay. So parties, you have now 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. Can you please display the results on the screen? So not receiving the required 2/3 majority, to proposed amendment to list all angulate eels in the Appendix 2 with an entry into effect delayed by 18 months was rejected. So with this, I think it is almost 12. I don't think we will reopen anything now. I will open anything now. I would conclude that we have finished this morning's business, and I wish you all a good appetite, and we will start in the afternoon first with document 87 on the resolution on eels. Thank you very much.